So I've received multiple emails and comments on videos asking me to do a alternatives video of the very popular indie niche fragrance L'air du Desert Marocain and its own alternative, its own extrait de parfum version, A COUER du Desert. So that's exactly what I've got here in today's video, alternatives to this very dry, dusty amber fragrance that's very popular for the brand. It used to be one of my favorite fragrances. I used to speak quite a bit about it like 8 years ago. But I've kind of, moved on. I've discovered new fragrances, but I'm circling back to experience this fragrance and also answer your question. So in today's video, I've got alternatives. They're not going to be dupes or clones. They're going to be, if you like L'air du Desert Marocain, you're going to like these fragrances sort of a thing. And so they are dry and dusty amber fragrances. But in addition to those fragrances that I'm going to recommend to you, I do have a bonus section after the outro. You're going to find out all about the latest Tower Perfumes fragrance, NEXIN. I was able to buy a bottle from Ministry of Scent here really quickly, really last minute as they announced, and they sold out really quickly. I've got number 54 of 1,000. So you're going to find out all about this. I'm going to do a first impressions after the outro. So if you're interested in finding out all about these Tower Perfumes fragrances and alternatives to L'air du Desert Marocain, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian. Yes, we're talking about L'air du Desert Marocain and A COUER du Desert alternatives. Are you a fan of these two fragrances? Are you a fan of Tower Perfumes? Let me know if you are and what your favorite fragrances are. Most likely you're a fan of, L'air du Desert Marocain. It's really, really popular. It's an eau de toilette intense fragrance, not an extrait de parfum like the extrait de parfum A COUER du Desert, but really, really popular. I really enjoyed this. I discovered this around 2014. It's been a favorite of mine up until probably 2018. I was speaking a lot about it, but there's an overload of fragrances out there, so I've kind of put it in the back. Now I'm circling back to it. So it's a fragrance that was launched in 2005, and it used to be in a completely different bottle until the brand Tower Perfumes created all their uniform bottles and packaging and things like that. But L'air du Desert Marocain features notes of coriander, petitgrain from the bitter orange tree, lemons, bergamot, jasmine, cistus, bourbon geranium, cedarwood, vetiver, vanilla, patchouli, and ambergris. Well, it does have ambergris, and it doesn't get animalic on me. It might get animalic on some folks, but for me, it's more like an amber. You're creating an amber accord with the usage of ambergris and also cistus, labdanum, and then the vanilla together. So it creates that kind of a slightly animalic, slightly salty, amber accord. But for me, it's quite dry and dusty and very, very spicy. And you definitely experience the petitgrain. It's really, really prominent. If you're familiar with this note, it's here. But you know what? It's not standing out too much. It's quite nicely blended. It's a smooth blend, but very dry and dusty. I feel like Andy Tower has captured the experience of the air of the Moroccan desert, basically what it translates to, L'air du Desert Marocain. And I feel like it's very dusty and dry and very ambery and a bit salty in the air as well, because it can be along the coast. But a wonderful amber fragrance, really, really great. One of the best indie niche fragrances out there. If you're brand new to the world of niche perfumery and you're looking for amber fragrances, definitely try L'air du Desert Marocain. I absolutely love it. I love the way it smells. And I've been a fan of it, and as I said, I've kind of put it in the back because there's a lot of new fragrances coming out, and I like to explore and discover new fragrances and see what they're all about. But still, L'air du Desert Marocain is probably one of the best ambers out there. Now, in addition to that, in 2016, 11 years after the original L'air du Desert Marocain came out, Tower Perfumes launched A COUER du Desert. So basically taking the eau de toilette intense fragrance of L'air du Desert Marocain and intensifying it and making it an extrait de parfum, highly concentrated fragrance. It's the same notes. You've got all the same notes in here, and it's just a really great, intense take on the original. But for me, I feel like this is a bit more smoother, not as dry and dusty as the original. So the extrait de parfum concentration makes it a bit more sticky syrupy rather than dry and dusty, if that makes sense. So I was a big fan of the original. I prefer the A COUER du Desert, the extrait de parfum, not only because it's, a bit sweet, sticky, syrupy, but also because I like higher concentration fragrances. But to me, the fragrances do smell very similar with some minute differences in them. I think the amber is a bit more amplified. The petitgrain and the citrusy touches are a bit more toned down, but not a lot. They're not a lot. Spices are still there, and the entire experience is still dry. It's a dry, dusty amber, but when you're comparing it between Accour de Desert and L'Air de Desert Marocain, I get a more sticky, syrupy experience with Accour de Desert compared to L'Air de Desert Marocain. So those are the differences between the two fragrances, and now you know a little bit about these two fragrances, and I'm going to recommend the alternatives to either L'Air de Desert Marocain or Accour de Desert. Alright, the first fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of Histoire de Parfum. It's an APARTE Irreverent, this one right here. I recently featured this in a video of Luca Maffei fragrances, created fragrances. He created this for Histoire de Parfums. And I thought, wow, this could be a great alternative to Accour de Desert because it's dry, dusty, not necessarily that kind of syrupy, sticky kind of an amber, more like the very resinous and, you know, dry type of amber. It's also very dark, and in that video I said if you look at the, you know, the color of the bottle, that's exactly what you're going to get. But it has notes of Elemi, Styrax, amber, patchouli, coffee, sandalwood, lavender, and bergamot. I think the lavender and bergamot are pretty faint in this, but the rest of the notes are pretty prominent. It's very Elemi forward and also Styrax forward. Let's go ahead and quickly sniff so I can tell you a little bit about this. It's very, very dark and very, very smoky, and we're getting the smokiness, very resinous as well. It's Elemi, Styrax, and the amber touches is what's providing me the smoke. There's some sweetness there. I think the coffee and perhaps the you know, the lavender and also maybe the patchouli are providing it a bit of sweetness, but it's a very dark fragrance and very, very resinous and dry and dusty as well. So this is Histoire de Parfums un APARTE Irreverent. First recommendation for you guys. Let me know if you know that fragrance. The next recommendation is from the house of CABANEL. It's BARKHANE, this one right here. This one does get a little sweeter, but it's a very myrrh forward fragrance. It's an amber with lots of myrrh, so it does get resinous and dry and dusty like L'Air de Desert Marocain as well. So it's myrrh, labdanum, tonka, vanilla, oud, cumin, patchouli, vetiver, musk, curry, and geranium. So in comparison to un APARTE Irreverent, this one's definitely brighter, and I think when you compare Irreverent to L'Air de Desert Marocain, it is definitely darker than L'Air de Desert Marocain. This one to me does get closer to L'Air de Desert Marocain, and it's its brightness that kind of compares it to L'Air de Desert Marocain. So it's, once again, it's a bit sweeter, it's a little sweeter than L'Air de Desert Marocain, but very much in line with its brightness and its dusty, dry qualities. This is a really great fragrance and an underrated house, although lately they've been doing some more modern fragrances, but I think this is one of their best. One of their best. I love it. It's a great, great dry, dusty, resinous, myrrh forward amber that I think you guys should definitely look into if you haven't already. So I do a lot of videos on amber fragrances. You're going to notice that these fragrances here are not necessarily the ones I speak about quite a bit. So you're going to find some amber fragrances that I haven't spoken a lot about or at all. This next fragrance is from the house of LORGA Parfums and AMBRE Platine, this one right here. For me, this is a bit sweeter than L'Air de Desert Marocain because it does have caramel. It's a bit nutty as well, but once again, when you wear it, it's still very dry and dusty. It's got caramel, almonds, vanilla, cinnamon, pink pepper, white musk, rose, and mandarin. So again, as I was saying earlier, these fragrances are not going to be identical. I think they're great alternatives to L'Air de Desert Marocain. If you like that fragrance, you're probably going to like these fragrances. So I would get samples of these or sample in store to see if you're going to like these. But let's go ahead and quickly smell Ambre Platine. Yeah, this one definitely is almondier, but still very dry and dusty and powdery. Dry and dusty causes powdery touches. This one you'll experience the dry and dustiness and the powdery touches, and also the almonds and the caramel come in, but caramel is not sticky syrupy, and even though it does have that sticky syrupy quality, it's more in the powdery form. But very spicy, also lots of spices. Pink pepper is really, really prominent here, but it's a great take on something like L'Air de Desert Marocain. If you want something almondy, a bit caramel, but still very dry and dusty and powdery, definitely try LORGA Parfums Ambre Platine. Then we're moving on to the house of Veronique GABAI. This is Sexy Garrigue, this one right here. So Sexy Garrigue to me is resins. It's very resinous and ambery for sure, but also this got this kind of like a pine tree note, which causes this very interesting green, not necessarily citrusy because the L'Air de Desert Marocain has that citrusy leaves Petitgrain note, But to me, this one kind of replaces that note, causing it more like a camphoric pine touch against the ambery touches. It's wood resins, labdanum, amber, pine tree, patchouli, and herbs. And again, it's very dry and dusty, but throughout the dry and dusty powderiness, you do experience some sticky, sweet, syrupy touches of the amber in there as well. So let's go ahead and quickly sniff this one just to tell you a little bit more about it. I did a video on this house, and this one turned out to be one of my favorites from the house. And Sexy Garrigue is definitely a bit more stickier and sweeter than L'Air du Desert Marocain. But once again, it falls in line with that kind of style of the dry, dusty amber. This is inspired by the south of France and, you know, not necessarily the sea, but the vegetation in the higher uplands of the south of France, I think, from what I remember. I don't know the exact story on the inspiration, but where they have a lot of pine trees growing and things like that, and they have these resins and sap and things like that as well. Very great fragrance, really wonderful offering from this house. This is Veronique GABAI, it's Sexy Garrigue. Let me know if you know that fragrance. But we're moving on to a house called NARCOTICA. This is DOZA, this one right here. And DOZA, it's, you know, we're getting sweeter, but still very, very dry and dusty with this one. This one has amber along with vanillic touches and also tobacco-ish touches. And it does have a very complex wear. There's a lot of things going on in this one. Not as easy to wear like L'Air du Desert Marocain. And even though I say L'Air du Desert Marocain is easier to wear, some people find it difficult because it's amber, it's dry, it's dusty, a bit, you know, ambergris-like. So I just think this is it's more complex is what I'm saying. Is there's a lot of things going on. You might go through a lot of journeys with this one in comparison to L'Air du Desert Marocain. But let's go in and quickly smell this. But the notes are sweet amber, blonde tobacco, labdanum, vanilla beans, myrrh, musk, incense, smoke, cypress, gaiac wood, Sichuan pepper, black currant. So there's some fruity touches in there, but they're faint, very faint. This is also a bit tobacco-ish, as I said. There's a tobacco, and it's a bit smoky as well. And you know, when you're wearing L'Air du Desert Marocain, it is, after all, ambery touches, and there's probably some resinous touches in there as well. So there's, for sure, some smokiness that pops through. But even though it's sweet, it's not necessarily like uber sweet here. Still very much in line with that kind of dry, dusty, you know, amber, the powdery amber that L'Air du Desert Marocain is known for. A different take on something like that, different directions and things like that. So definitely one for you to try if you're a fan of L'Air du Desert Marocain. You like the idea of ambers that are dry and dusty, for sure try that one. Next, moving on to the house of Francesca Bianchi, it's Byzantine Amber, this one right here. So first off, this one is definitely in the DNA of Francesca Bianchi fragrances. So if you like her DNA, you're going to like this one. But definitely, it's a kind of a dark, leathery, resinous, dusty, you know, dry and dusty amber. This is not as dry and dusty as L'Air du Desert Marocain. It's a bit more gummy. Gum resin is what I get with this one, rather than dry resin. But still, it's on the dry side. And I think some of the notes create that. So this one probably would be the most different in comparison to L'Air du Desert Marocain, especially since you have the DNA of Francesca Bianchi fragrances in here. But it's a really, really great amber. It's got the sweetness that you want in comparison to L'Air du Desert Marocain. Maybe you find L'Air du Desert Marocain not so sweet, because ambers can get sweet. This one's on the sweeter side, and for sure a powdery side that the fragrances of Francesca Bianchi are known for. So yeah, it's wonderful with leather, labdanum, cinnamon, frankincense, benzoin, ambergris, styrax, and geranium. Definitely a solid release. Very dark, sweet, powdery, dry, dusty, and leathery as well. So moving on to the 8th fragrance I'm recommending, it's Maison Crivelli's Ambre Chromatique, this one right here. If you caught a video I did on amber fragrances late last year, I mentioned this one was not one of my favorite releases. It doesn't really work for me, but when I'm smelling the fragrance, it does fit in line with the style of L'Air du Desert Marocain. That's why I'm recommending it, but this is not one of my favorite fragrances from this house, unfortunately. It's incense, pink pepper, davana, osmanthus, benzoin, vanilla, and kigala wood. It's very dry, dusty, resinous, and powdery, and it's for sure an amber, but kind of smoky, and again, very dusty, dry, as I said. You might like this one. It's not one of my favorites, unfortunately. My favorite in that red bottle collection is Patchouli Magnetic. I don't even care for that Hibiscus Mahajad. There is that fruitiness in this one, but for sure it's dry, dusty with the incense smokiness in there as well. Pink pepper, give you that spice. It's lightly sweetened up with the benzoin and vanilla, lightly. And then the Akigala wood is prominent. It's very much used by Quintambiche or perfumers over at Givaudan. It's like this very cleaned up patchouli note. Again, I don't care for that one as much myself, but you might like it because it could be a great alternative to L'air du Desert Marocain. But moving on to a new fragrance I haven't spoken about on the channel, it's Ramon Bejar's Deep Amber Extrait. This is actually a great amber, very strong, and also very much in line with L'air du Desert Marocain. It's dry and dusty, powdery, it's very resinous, and it has notes of Labdanum, Styrax, Amber Extreme, Benzoin, Amber Core, Musk, and Ambrette. This is a new discovery for me. The brand is a new discovery for me, although I've known about the brand for a while, but I featured one of their other fragrances in a video recently, and I'm featuring this here because I feel like it'll be a great alternative to LDDM or A Coeur de Desert. Yeah, this one to me is a bit more religious also. I'm getting like very much like a church-like incense experience. But in the end, it's very dry. Not so much dry like L'air du Desert Marocain, but still it's on the dry side. Not the sticky, syrupy, sweet kind of amber. And you experience the Styrax. There's a bit of an antique woods-like smell in this as well. Almost like you're walking into a very ancient church. You can smell the church smoke and also the antique furniture in there. Really great fragrance. I definitely want to review that fully sometime in the near future. So moving on to Une Nuit Nomade, Ambre Khanjar. This one right here. Really great amber fragrance from this house. That house is so good. Their fragrances are amazing. I really love them. And I featured one of their fragrances in one of my Scent Club kits. But this features notes of black plums, labdanum, orris, sandalwood, leather, vanilla, benzoin resinoid. But this one might be the more syrupiest of the ambers that I'm talking about here today. But it is on the smoky side and the dry side still. And of course the fruitiness of the plums comes in. But this, you know, kind of goes more traditionally amber, the kind of amber that I like, the sweeter kind, the powdery kind. But when you're really focusing on it, it's still on the dry side. It's definitely like the air of the Moroccan desert sweetened up. But really great fragrance. This is one of the best ambers out there. This is Ambre Khanjar. Check it out if you don't know that one. And then finally, we've got 4 more. This is Tango from the House of Musk Milano. Do you guys know this one? This is a fragrance created by Cécile Zarokian, and it's one of the better ambers out there, one of her better creations. It's amber with cumin, benzoin, cinnamon, tonka beans, cardamom. It does get sweeter. We are getting into a more sweeter territory. And this one also has a bit of a soapy edge about it. It's definitely very solid. It's got spice. It's a spicy, very spicy fragrance. And the amber is, again, it's dry, it's dusty, but more warm, spicy, and also we've got the dryness of the cumin spice that's in here and the cardamom spice as well. And I think it's the cardamom that's giving me that soapy edge. If you've ever eaten cardamom, in the Middle East they drink it with coffee, and whenever I drink this coffee I get like a soapiness, and it's here. There's definitely a soapy edge to the cardamom for sure, very prominent, but a really great amber. It's Tango from the House of Musk Milano. Alright, moving on to Clive Christian's Blonde Amber, this one right here. Now we're getting into more of a syrupy direction. I wanted to highlight some that are definitely more sticky, syrupy, sweet, but a really great fragrance from Clive Christian. I had dismissed them for a while after they did their whole changeover, but I quite like some of their later offerings, especially like Blonde Amber and Town and Country. This is blonde tobacco, tuberose, sweet dried fruits, rum, bitter orange, pink pepper, tonka, vetiver, and myrrh. Let's go ahead and smell this. Again, it's dry and dusty, but not so much like L'air du Desert Marocain, and a lot of the fragrances I'm recommending don't have that Petitgrain note. That is pretty much a trademark with the L'air du Desert Marocain. I can't find any fragrances like that, but remember, we're not talking about dupes, we're talking about alternatives, and that's what this is. A great alternative. This is definitely also very easy to wear amber. It's not one of the more edgier ones like some of the other ones I recommended today. This one is very approachable and very accessible to wear. Really great. It smells really fantastic. I would say that's a bit more designer-esque. I shouldn't say that. It's not really. But still, a very good amber. And then we've got Foudroyant from the House of Givenchy. We're talking about a designer finally. This is the only designer in the list. And this one to me, when I smelled it, I'm like, dang, that's like got the qualities of Lerdo Desert Marocain. This is Tolu Balsam with oud, labdanum, and cedar. So it's very resinous. And this time we're also dealing with oud. So we've got resinous touches, we've got balsamic touches, dry, woody, oudy touches, and of course some woods like cedar. And to me, this one has a incensey like qualities, but still very dry, very, very dry fragrance. Even though we've got Tolu Balsam in here, I think the oud creates more of a dryness. Tolu Balsam is balsamic, so it's a bit more sticky, syrupy. It's creating the amber with the labdanum here. Labdanum is the sticky paste from the rock rose, and so it's really totally like Lerdo Desert Marocain. If you probably add Petitgrain in this, you're going to get that kind of dry, dusty experience with that really signature Petitgrain note that's prominent in Lerdo Desert Marocain. And then last but not least, I'm recommending this one. It's a fairly new amber. It's Maître Parfumeur Gantier's Ambre Tibet. Have you guys sampled this one? We featured this in Mystery Box. I know there were a lot of fans of this one. This is a different take on their fragrance, like the Ambre Perso. And again, this is also kind of a, country city inspired Ambre Tibet, whereas we've got Lerdo Desert Marocain in Morocco. So I felt like I threw this one in. It's not necessarily very close to Lerdo Desert Marocain, but it would be a great alternative. So labdanum, ambergris, vanilla, sandalwood, incense, davana, eucalyptus, patchouli, rose, and geranium. I'm seeing geranium quite a bit. It's a great note. I really think it's a great perfumery note. I do end up liking that note quite a bit. Again, it's not necessarily close, but still very dry, but this one's definitely syrupier, a little bit more sticky syrupy, but still it's on the dry, powdery side for sure. Very good, very, very good. Very, very spicy take on amber. So anyway, those are my alternatives for the Lerdo Desert Marocain from Tower Perfumes. Do let me know if you're a fan of Tower Perfumes, Lerdo Desert Marocain, and Accour de Desert. I think if you're a fan of these, and if you've never tried them, get them. If you're a fan of amber, try them, sample them. And then if you already have these and you're looking for alternative fragrances, the ones I'm recommending are definitely going to be great alternatives. But do let me know if you have another alternative to Lerdo Desert Marocain. I'd like to find out. But either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. Okay, as promised, I am doing a bonus section with the Lerdo Desert Marocain alternatives, and we are doing a first impressions of NEXIN. I have not smelled this. I blind bought this. Blind bought it because it was a limited edition release. Tower Perfumes NEXIN, only 1,000 bottles. This is number 54 and of 1,000. So when I was looking up the notes for this, I didn't look up the notes when I bought the bottle, but then I went to look up notes for this video. I noticed some notes that are kind of similar to other fragrances of Tower Perfumes. I noticed lemon blossoms, and I've seen that lemon blossoms note come up quite a bit lately in his fragrances. So I'm just hoping that this is something completely original and new, and not necessarily something that's similar to other fragrances, because I wanted to make sure I got this fragrance, but I wanted something very original. First of all, I think the bottle is pretty original, and also it looks like the packaging has changed. This is the old packaging. This is for Lerdo Desert Marocain. Hopefully they'll go with packaging like this in the future. These are fine, but I think these are going to be better, a little more compact and a little less weight. But anyway, this is new packaging, as I said. This is NEXIN. And of course, if you don't know, Tower Perfumes fragrances do come with a signed, little autograph from Andy Tower. Let's see, do I have one in this one as well? Probably do. Yep, as you can see right there. I enjoyed this box, but I think maybe it's time to move on to the other boxes. But yeah, this one does come with a signature right there. And I like this box. Definitely do. I thought this would completely... It's not. It holds the thing. So that's actually quite good. So I like this. Anyway, this comes off. And then NEXIN is right here. This is it. This is the first time I've seen a white bottle from Tower Perfumes. That's one of the reasons why I'm excited about this. Although this box is a bit flimsy, but I think it'll do. And here is the bottle. NEXIN is right there. I like this white bottle. So They have 50 ml listed right there, and this is an extrait de parfum, so that's why I guess they're doing this limited edition thing. So the notes are vetiver, orris, lemon blossom, bergamot, oak moss, ambergris, geranium, cedar, sandalwood, orange blossom, lemons, rose, tonka, and musk. Let's go ahead and see what this one's all about. I did not buy the very last fragrance from Tower Perfumes. I should probably buy it. The very last release. Golistan? I think that's what it was called. This is very powdery and vetiver forward. There was a vetiver fragrance from Tower Perfumes. I have a bottle. I don't remember the name now. This is kind of reminding me a little bit of that, but not quite. The lemon blossom is very prominent in this. It's a nice meshing with the vetiver. I really love the idea that he uses lemon blossoms. I don't see it come up in fragrances much, and that's why it totally caught me like, okay, he's using lemon blossoms again, so I wondered if this was similar to any other fragrances. But it is reminding me of his vetiver fragrance that he already had. But this is kind of a bright, citrusy take on vetiver. But the vetiver is still kind of this grassy, dark, rooty kind of characteristic in there. There's citruses, there's brightness, and I'm getting aromatics as well. I'm picking up like herbal aromatic touches. Mostly it's the vetiver. The lemon blossom is really, really prominent. I like that the orris is right there, giving it the powdery edge. And then the aromatics, like the geranium, comes in as well. This is good. This is good. Not as great as I wanted it, because I'm a bit bored of vetiver. But I'll get used to this, because the lemon blossom is very exciting. The vetiver is a bit boring, but the combination is quite nice. Are you guys bored of vetiver like I am? Oud and vetiver are not exciting notes for me lately. I don't know why. So that's the disappointing part about this one. I like the way it smells, but vetiver itself, because I can get the vetiver in here so strongly, it's kind of, you know, like, I'm kind of bored of vetiver. Give me something else kind of a feel when I get the smell of vetiver. But in the end, I think it's a great job the way it's done. I'd like to wear it and see what it's all about. The only other thing is it's reminding me of his vetiver fragrance, which I have a bottle, so I'll have to take it out and compare it. The vetiver fragrance was a bottle like this, but it had a green, yellow, green kind of a label on there. So I'll have to pull mine. I don't know where it is. I've got all my vintage up there, or my discontinued up there, and I'll compare it. But from what I remember, the vetiver that he had was not, didn't have the lemon blossoms, unless I'm forgetting that it had lemon blossom, but I don't recall it having lemon blossoms. But it was kind of a neon take on vetiver. For some reason, that's what I remember. So I'd like to find out. But let me know your thoughts if you've gotten your nose on NEXIN. I'd like to see what you guys think about it. Are you bored of vetiver like I am? I'm not excited about vetiver as much lately. Just like oud. Lots of vetiver and oud fragrances out there. It's just like an overwhelming amount of them. Maybe that's why I'm not as excited. Once in a while, I'll smell something that I'll go, wow, that's so amazing, even though it's a note that I'm bored of, like vetiver and oud. And this one is like that, but it's not as exciting for me. But either way, I think it'll be a great collector's item until I circle back and say I'm really into vetiver again. But do let me know if you've sampled NEXIN, if you what you think about it. Does it remind you of his vetiver fragrance, which I'm freaking drawing a blank with the name. It's been a while since I've seen the name, so I've put it out of my mind. But does it remind you of his vetiver fragrance? And if you weren't able to get a bottle of NEXIN, are you on the hunt for a bottle of NEXIN? I'm not going to sell my bottle. I'm keeping it. I don't get rid of any bottles that I'm purchasing or gifted. So they're all here in the studio for my sniff session clients to come in and smell. But do let me know if you're never were able to get a bottle of NEXIN and you're on the hunt for it. Either way, thanks so much for tuning into this additional section of First Impressions on NEXIN. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.